Yeah. Well, hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining. It's really great to have such an amount of people. We weren't expecting that, so it's really good. Yeah, we are looking forward to hear Grietjie in a bit. But before we start, we would like to introduce Future for Nature Academy first. So some of you are a member of Future for Nature Academy, but the majority isn't. So we would first like to introduce it. Also, I see the most of you put off their microphone and camera, so that's nice because we have a better connection with that. Let me share my screen. Can you see the presentation? I think so.
Yes, we can see that.
Sorry? Oh, okay, great, thanks. So Future for Nature is an organization, a network of students, young graduates and professionals who are very interested and ambitious about nature conservation. And Future for Nature Academy is divided into different cities throughout the Netherlands. Here you can see the different cities. And me, Annemie, Marloes, Jolinka, Ricardo, and my sister Jules is part of the Den Bosch group. And we organized the event of tonight. And Future for Nature Academy, we have a goal, an ambition, and that is to motivate and inspire ourselves, but also other people to learn more and to gain more knowledge about protecting our vulnerable nature. And we try to do this by reaching as many as people as possible, and by doing this by spreading our positive messages within the Netherlands, but also worldwide. And we do this by organizing different events. Due to Corona, of course, last year we mostly had online events like tonight. But if Corona wasn't here, you can think about other activities like workshops, nature walks, also, of course, presentation by professors, but also excursions like bed excursions and so on. So it's really various, and in that way we try to motivate as many as people as possible. And these activities are for members of the Future for Nature Academy, but also for non-members. So we can spread our message to the world. If you would like to know more about the Future for Nature, you can reach to us by different social media accounts. We, for example, have Facebook and Instagram account. But you can also find more information on our website, and you can also reach to us by email. If you are interested in becoming a member, you can always email us to get more information, but also to tell us you would like to become a member. That was a bit of a short story about Future for Nature Academy, but if you want more information, please look online. It's really cool. Let me see. Yeah, we are back it seems. I would like to move forward to our guest of honor this night, Grietjie Stander. She is a wildlife research assistant at Mogalakwena River Reserve in South Africa. And me and my sister went there in 2019 for an internship. And we fell in love with the reserve, the country, of course, its animals and the culture. And during our time there, Grietjie learned us a lot about nature, but also the African culture. And just her ambition is really inspiring. We thought it would be really cool to share her inspiration and ambition with you guys. Therefore we organized this event tonight. I would like to give the word to Grietjie. Also we do have a recording of the presentation because the internet is not always stable in South Africa. So therefore we have 2 rounds of questions and presentation. The first round will go about the reserve itself, and after that we have a short question round about that part. And then Grietjie will tell more about her thesis she is currently doing, and we have a question round after that presentation. So yeah, have fun, Grietjie. We really look forward to it, and good luck.
Thank you, Liz. I just want to say thank you so much to FFNA for inviting me and giving me the opportunity just to share what I'm doing and then just share my research project with you guys, but then also share the place that I'm working at and at Mogalakwena Research Centre and the type of work we do and then what is available for students at the research centre. So yeah, I know there goes a lot of organization in these kind of things, so thank you so much for making it happen. And I guess just a quick background on myself. I'm South African. I was born and raised in South Africa. I was born or raised on farms, so I always had a keen interest in wildlife and nature. And after school, I was blessed enough to go study at a university where I completed my Bachelor's of Science in Zoology and Geography. And after that, we do an extra year, which is called the Honours Year. It's basically like a mini master's. So I completed my honours year in environmental sciences, but after uni, I guess I was a bit overwhelmed. I didn't really know where to look for a job or what kind of jobs I would want to do. So I tried 1 or 2 other things, of which one was field guiding. So I completed my field guiding training. I did a 3-month course. It was honestly an amazing 3 months. I learned so much during that time. And I guided a bit, but I very soon realized that I'm more interested in research. So I started applying for research jobs and I ended up at Mogalakwena. And yeah, that is also, as Liz mentioned, that is where I met them. And they had very cool projects as well as at Mogalakwena. They had very interesting topics as well, both her and her sister. So yeah, that's basically it, I think.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I will go to the presentation.
Yes, I really do want to apologize to all the listeners that I can't do it live. As Liz mentioned, our Wi-Fi is sometimes a bit unstable, so it's better just to have a recording so everything goes a bit more smoothly.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, I didn't mention, but we are recording this meeting, so people can look at afterwards if they weren't able to make this, so that you guys know.
Well, did you start it?
Sorry? Oh, this isn't a good one. Sorry, did you say something on this?
Yeah, if you started the recording already.
Yeah, I did.
Oh, okay. I can't see, so that's...
Okay, well, have fun.
So I've been living and working at Mogalakwena Research Centre for 2 years now, and I work as a wildlife research assistant. So I basically assist with all the research projects, or most of the research projects. And I would say the biggest part of my job is student supervision. So I supervise students from the beginning, where I assist and help with choosing the project and setting up the project, to the end where I assist and help with data analysis and report writing.
You don't hear anything anymore, I think.
I think it stopped.
Why did it stop? Okay, let me try it again. Sorry. Okay.
So I've been living and working at Mogalakwena Research Centre for 2 years now, and I work as the wildlife research assistant. So I basically assist with all the research projects, or most of the research projects. And I would say the biggest part of my job is student supervision. So I supervise students from the beginning, where I assist and help with choosing the project and setting up the project, to the end where I assist and help with data analysis and report writing. So yeah, I would say that's kind of like the biggest part of my job. But then I also do help a lot with the daily tasks of running a research center and running Mogalakwena Research Centre. We still have a lot of general admin work that needs to be done. We have maintenance that needs to be done, student transfers, and so forth. So I do help a lot with those tasks as well. So with this presentation, I would like to introduce Mogalakwena Research Centre to you and just give you a bit of a background on who we are, where we are located, and basically what we do. So we are located in South Africa, and we are located in the northern parts of the country. So the red cross there at the top, that is basically where we are. So you can see we are quite close to the Botswana and the Zimbabwe borders. So really in the northern parts of South Africa. Our students usually arrive in Johannesburg at the international airport, where they will then either take a domestic flight or a public bus to Polokwane. Polokwane is the closest city to Mogalakwena Research Centre. It's about a 2-hour drive, and Polokwane is also where we pick up our students. So we are located in quite a rural area of South Africa. There's not much around us apart from dirt roads and wildlife. But obviously, if you want to conduct research in wildlife or ecological research, it's a great place to do that. So just to give you a bit of a background on how the companies work, the Mogalakwena group is owned by a family. It's owned by the Grietjie family, and they bought land in this part of South Africa in the 1980s, and they've just kind of been expanding ever since. And the 4 companies that I've listed here on the screen, these are the 4 main companies they currently have, and it's all owned and managed by the family members. So the word Mogalakwena is derived from the Mogalakwena River, which runs through the property. And the word Mogalakwena is a word in one of the local languages. And if I translate it to English, it means fierce crocodile. And rightfully so. We do have quite a few big crocodiles that use the river, and we do see them every now and then swimming past or sunbasking on the bridge or on the sand riverbanks. So that's where the name Mogalakwena comes from. It's derived from the Mogalakwena River. So just to introduce the companies very shortly to you, I'll obviously talk a bit more about the research center in the rest of the presentation. But the Mogalakwena River Lodge is situated on the banks of the Mogalakwena River. So the views from the lodge is spectacular. And they obviously focus on tourism and hospitality. Then there's Mogalakwena Craft Art Centre, and they focus on traditional handcrafts, and they also create various artwork. They employ women from the local area and the surrounding villages, and these women make various of different crafts, which include things like beadwork, as you can see on the example there, embroidery, as well as basket weaving, and everything is done by hand. So they sell their products to various clients. They have South African clients, but they also have a lot of international clients as well. Then lastly, there's Botanica Natural Products, and they focus on sustainable agriculture and horticulture. So they plant indigenous plants. They have big orchards with indigenous plants, and then they harvest these plants to extract oils from, and they make various cosmetic products from the extractions and the oils they get from the indigenous plants. And all of their products are organic certified. So they focus on sustainable organic agriculture. So from a research center side, the majority of our projects focuses on wildlife or ecological research, but we do have a few projects available in the fields of anthropology and craft and design. And if students are interested in those projects, we will collaborate with Mogalakwena Craft Art Centre. And in a similar way, we also collaborate with Botanica Natural Products. We have a few projects available in agriculture and horticulture. And if students want to conduct research in those projects, we will then collaborate with Botanica. And all of these companies are located in close proximity from each other. So it's really easy to collaborate, and it's really easy to move from one area, one company to the other. So Mogalakwena Research Centre is located on the Mogalakwena River Reserve. It is a privately owned reserve, and it is also a fenced reserve. So the owners have introduced various game or wildlife species to the reserve. We have various antelope species like impala, kudu, blesbok. We also have zebras and then the big population of giraffes. So we accept anyone that is interested in research, and anyone that really wants to gain experience and develop their research skills. Most of the students that join us at Mogalakwena Research Centre are students that need to conduct their internships or their practical internships at the universities or their schools. These students usually stay for about 3 to 6 months. I would say that's the average time that they stay with us, but we've had students and volunteers that have stayed a month with us. We've had students that have stayed 9 months with us. So it really depends on the needs of the students and what they want to gain through this experience, and also how much time they have available. We also do accept student groups. We do collaborate with universities. We have collaborated in the past with universities from Australia, the US, as well as Germany. And they will send over students or student groups, and these groups spend anything from a week to 2 weeks with us, and we have various research activities with them as well. So we have projects available in a range of different fields. Most of our projects do focus on ecology, but we also have projects available in anthropology, craft, art and design, and horticulture and agriculture. And then, as I mentioned, we collaborate with the other companies. So I would say one of the main aims of Mogalakwena Research Centre is to create a safe environment for students to gain practical experience in data collection and gain practical experience in research, and also develop their report writing and data analysis skills. And to do this independently, we give a lot of freedom to our students to conduct research independently. So these are the research questions our ecological projects mostly focus on. So these are the questions we generally try and answer through our ecological projects. But for us, it's very important that students choose a project that they are passionate about and that they are really interested in. I mean, our students spend a lot of time in the field. We usually have 2 sessions of field work per day. We have a morning session and an afternoon session, depending on the project, of course. But we usually spend about 2 to 3 hours in the field per session. So you really spend a lot of time in the bush, and that's why it's so important for us to have students choose something that they will enjoy collecting data on. We are also very open to new ideas. We do have a list of set out projects that we make available to students to choose from. But if students have a new idea, or if they want to add another aspect to one of the projects, one of the already existing projects, we are very open to that. And we usually sit down and discuss the possibilities, and if it works, we go for it. Then we do provide research supervision from the beginning to the end. Usually the first 2 weeks after students arrive is spent on orientation. So we take the students out into the bush. We do game walks and game drives, just to get them comfortable with the area, and try and teach them the roads. And then after that, we will sit down with the student and we'll discuss the project. We will set up the materials and methods, and we will supervise right through. We'll sometimes assist with data collection in the field, and we will help until the end with the data analysis as well as the report writing. So really do try and help the students from the beginning to the end as much as we can. So I would like to introduce 4 of our main projects to you. I obviously cannot show and discuss everything, but I will just very briefly show you the four of our main projects available at the center. So first of all, we have giraffe behavioral projects at Mogalakwena Research Centre, and these projects usually focus on social behavior, feeding behavior, and recently we've also added thermoregulation to the giraffe projects. And what makes our giraffe projects amazing is the fact that our giraffes are habituated. So it really is cool. They are used to human presence, so they're not afraid of humans being in the field with them. So our students can follow them, our students can walk in between the herd and next to them. Obviously always keeping a safe distance. They are still wild animals and we do need to respect their space. But they do allow us in their presence. And it's an amazing and an incredible experience working basically among giants because they are very big animals. And it's an amazing feeling to have and also to collect data in this way. I mean, you're observing an animal in its natural environment doing its natural behavior. So that's great for behavioral projects. Apart from that, we also do have an ID kit for our giraffes. So all of the giraffes on our reserve have names and we can identify them. You can identify a giraffe based on the coat pattern. Each coat pattern is unique to the individual. So it's basically like a fingerprint. And that is what we then use to identify the individuals, and they all have names, and students have the ID kit on their phone usually, and that's how they then identify individuals in the field. And this adds a great aspect to our social behavioral studies because we can look at interactions between specific individuals as well. Another popular project at the center is vervet monkey behavioral projects. And these projects usually focus on social behavior and feeding behavior. We also have a habituated vervet monkey troop. So again, it's the same as with the giraffes. We can follow these monkeys. They allow us in their presence. We can follow them. We can observe them. We can sit with them and spend time with them. And they don't mind us being with them. And again, obviously keeping a safe distance and respecting them because they are still wild animals. But it's great for behavioral studies because same as with the giraffes, you're observing these animals in their natural environment and you are collecting their natural data on their natural behavior in a natural environment. So that's obviously great for behavioral projects. We also do have an ID kit for our habituated vervet monkey troop, and all the adults have names. And we use the ID kit to identify them. We identify them mostly on facial features, but also on ear notches. Then if they have permanent scars on the body, we also use that. And it's also amazing to see when you're observing these monkeys to see how each individual has its own personality. And it's also a great add-on to identifying the individual, because you can identify them based on their habits and their mannerisms, and essentially on their personality. So it's really interesting watching them and spending time with them in the field as well. And we have called the name for this habituated troop is the lodge troop, because they tend to hang out a lot around the lodge area as well as our living quarters or living area, and we do get to see them on a daily basis. Then we also have animal water usage projects available at the research center. As I mentioned, we are a fenced reserve, so we do need to provide our animals with water. So we have a few artificial water holes, and at these water holes we have put up hides in which students can sit and observe animals and then also collect data from. So the photos you are seeing here on the screen, these are the type of views you have while you're sitting in these hides. So it really is also an incredible experience to watch the animals approach the water hole and spend time around these water holes. So these kind of projects usually focus on how, what is the difference between animal water usage? Is there a difference between species? Is there a difference between sexes? How does group composition influence their water usage? We also like to look at vigilance around water holes. What influences the vigilance at these water holes, and is the vigilance different between different species? We also like to put up camera traps at the water holes and then compare nocturnal and diurnal behavior around the water holes. And then lastly, another quite popular project with students is our carnivore ecology projects. We do have a few different carnivore species that use the reserve. So these are photos, camera trap photos of carnivores on the reserve. This is an African leopard. We have brown hyenas. We also have African civets that use the reserve. So our carnivore projects usually focus on carnivore distribution and diet. So students will walk transects and they will collect data on tracks and signs of presence, and through this we can determine their distribution. We also collect scats from the field. We bring it back to our lab. We have a very basic field lab, which we usually and mostly use for scat analysis. And then we can determine the diet of the carnivores. And we also do quite a few comparative studies between the different carnivores, as well as across seasons and over years. So these are our 4 main projects. But we do have, quite a range of other projects available for students to choose from. We have small mammal monitoring, we have herpetofauna monitoring, we have a few studies on invertebrates, studies on birds, as well as on nest boxes, which I will touch on in my thesis presentation. Then we also have a few projects available in botany. So yeah, there's quite a few options for students to choose from. Then I would also just like to mention that we are involved in an organization called Children in the Wilderness. So the photo here in the top right, you can see is a photo of school kids. And this organization, Children in the Wilderness, their aim is to educate kids in rural areas more about nature, teach them more about nature, about how to conserve and protect nature, how to have respect for wildlife, and then, how to live sustainable. We teach them things about recycling and so forth. And one of our staff members is involved in this organization, and we are involved in one of the schools in one of the villages in the area. So we do go to the school quite often, and we have various activities with the children. We also sometimes bring the children to the eco center, and we have activities around the eco center with them. We show them how to use microscopes, how to use binoculars. It's usually quite a bit of fun. But yeah, I just want to mention the cool project that we had. You can see it on the photo here. We had a volunteer, Hannah. It was a British volunteer, and she had this amazing project idea to make eco bricks, to teach the children how to make eco bricks, and then obviously show them how to recycle and then make stools, so little chairs out of the eco bricks. So we helped the children. We helped the children to make the eco bricks. We helped to make the stools with them, and then we all painted the stools together. So yeah, that was a really fun and very creative project we had with the kids. So yeah, that's basically our projects we have available at the center. I would like to end off by just giving you a insight as to what it's like to live in Mogalakwena bush camp. So all our students live in bush camp. We have dormitory style rooms. So the photo here at the bottom left, you can see how one of the rooms look on the inside. So all our students share rooms, and then we have this big open outside communal kitchen where we all cook together, and we have a lot of dinners or meals together. We have a weekly braai or a barbecue, basically the same as a braai. Then we sometimes go on game drives. We go for sunsets and sundowners. We also have a volleyball court in bush camp that students like to use in the afternoons and over weekends. So, apart from having this amazing opportunity and experience to collect data and to be in the African bush, to go out into the veld or the field every day and observe animals and be outside, you also have this amazing experience of living and sharing this experience with other people your age and interested in the same things. And you honestly do make lifelong friends in Mogalakwena bush camp. So yes, that is basically us in short. These are our contact details. Unfortunately, our website is down at the moment. So we are working really hard to get it back online, but you probably won't see anything if you go to our website now. But we do have a Facebook and an Instagram page. So if you guys want to check us out, if you want to give us a like or a follow, that would be great. But also our social media platforms are great ways just to get an insight of what life is like at Mogalakwena, and also the type of projects we do. We have a student profile on our social media platforms, so you can see what previous students have done at the center and what the projects is like. Then there's also our email address. If you guys have any more questions about details regarding the projects or details regarding the costs, the rates at Mogalakwena, you're more than welcome to send us an email and ask us questions, and we'll get back to you on that. So yeah, great. Thank you so much for listening, and I guess I'll ask you or answer your questions.
Okay, great. Yeah. Thank you, Grietjie, for this presentation. It was really cool.
Yes, no worries. It's a bit weird watching myself present, but yeah.
Are there any questions? You can you can put it on the chat, but you can also raise up your hand like Abe did, and I will give you them. Yeah, Abe, you have a question.
Yeah, to be honest, a research center sounds like an amazing place to have an internship at some point. And I have to have an internship for half a year next school year, so that'd be in around a year. But I was just wondering where I had to look for more information, where I had to apply, etc. What the how long you have to apply, etc.
Yeah, so usually I would refer you to our website, but our website is down. So I would say send an email to the email address I had on the slide there, and just ask all your questions there. Like I mentioned, we do have students that stay with us for 6 months and even longer, so the time period is not an issue. And then we are quite quick on responding to our students on the emails. So once you send the email, we'll respond within a day or two, and then we'll start the process from there. So yeah, I think the easiest is just to email us, and then we can take it from there.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Oh, I can see. There's a question. Oh, Matt was just asking, any chance we could have more details about the Hornbill project? Yeah, we will get to that in a minute. This was a presentation about the river reserve, and after the question round, we will go to the presentation about the thesis of Vicky. Are there any more questions? Oh, Thijs has a question.
Hi, Vicky.
Hello, Thijs. How are you?
Good, and you?
I'm doing good, thank you.
I had one question. Did the trees that we planted last year survive it at the school or not?
Some of them did, some of them did not. The school has a problem with water, so they couldn't water all the trees as much as they would have liked to. But I did see some of them still growing, so yeah.
Okay.
So Thijs was a student at Mogalakwena in 2019, 2020?
Yes, 1920. I was there at New Year's Eve, so.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. Hi.
All right.
Someone is asking the email. It's research@mogalakwena.com, right?
.com, yes.
Oh, yeah. Does someone else has a question? Well, I do, thinking.
Okay.
Can you explain more, like, what kind of qualities or abilities do students most of the time gain when they have a project or a study program at your place?
I think what makes our research center quite unique is the fact that we let students do a lot of the work independently and for themselves. So we obviously do have the project set out. So we do have kind of like an introduction and a summary of what the project is like, but we do encourage the students a lot to read up about their topic and kind of put out their materials and methods by themselves, and then we will sit with them and we'll go through it. But we try and get the students to really, research and then find their own way of doing things, and then we will go through it and see if it works. So I think that is really important if you do want to go into the research field, to gain that skill of developing your own ideas, of collecting data and of analyzing data. So yeah, I think that really kind of puts us apart, or gives us an extra oomph with our research center.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
But yeah, and also think we have quite a nice setup on the reserve as well. Our students, it's very safe in this area as well. All of us go out into the field on our own. We don't need someone to drive us around. We don't need someone to follow us or assist us in the field. We can really go out and then explore on our own as well.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Welcome.
Are there no questions anymore? Otherwise, I go to the other presentation. Oh. Louise, I hope I pronounced it well, but is asking, how did you know you wanted to study or work in this field?
Initially I actually wanted to be a vet. I don't know what changed my mind. I honestly, I don't know what changed my mind to not be a vet or study veterinary sciences. I think the way I grew up, we were always very exposed to the outdoor life, and both my parents are outdoor people. I mean, I grew up on a farm, so I was always exposed to animals, and we went camping a lot. My mom's a big birder, so I think she's very happy that I'm finally studying birds. So I think just the way I kind of grew up and what I was exposed to kind of nurtured that passion in me for wildlife. So yeah, and I do enjoy it, so I'm happy with my decisions so far.
Cool. I think it's a dream of a lot of people.
It is a nice job, I have to say.
Okay, shall I go to the next presentation?
Yeah.
Well, sit back everyone and listen to a really cool presentation.
I'm currently busy with my MSc thesis, and my project focuses on the effect of climate change on the breeding success of 3 African hornbill species. So usually the easiest way to explain to people what a hornbill is to refer to Zazu from The Lion King. So there's a photo of Zazu on the screen, and hopefully everyone recognizes Zazu. But yeah, Zazu is a hornbill, and I'm basically studying Zazus. So I'm interested in determining the effect of climate change, in particular temperature, on the breeding of 3 African hornbill species. My master's is stretched over 2 years, and I will include 2 breeding seasons into my master's. I'm currently still collecting data. I'm still going out into the field on a daily basis. I'm busy with my first breeding season. So for that reason, I unfortunately don't have results to show in the presentation. I have one graph at the end that shows preliminary results, but apart from that, there's unfortunately no results yet. So I will be focusing, or I'll be telling you a bit more about hornbills and their breeding strategy, and then of course my project and the type of data that I'm collecting. So hornbills are distributed throughout Southeast Asia and Africa. Currently, they have recognized 62 different hornbill species. But with taxonomy, these things do change very often. But currently, we have 62 different hornbill species, and we don't have any hornbills in the Americas. So they are restricted to Africa and Southeast Asia. So from the map, you can also see that they do inhabit quite a few different habitats. In Asia, it's mostly evergreen, subtropical and tropical forests, where in Africa, we do have a few species that inhabit the forest areas in Central Africa and West Africa, but we do have a lot of savanna and woodland hornbill species in Africa. The hornbills in Southeast Asia also tend to be a bit bigger than the African ones, and they have very big, elaborate, and colorful bills, whereas the hornbills in Africa are a little bit smaller and duller in color. They're still very beautiful birds, but not as colorful as the Asian hornbills. But we do have the ground hornbills in Africa. So this is, let me just quickly get the laser here. Here we go. So this is a photo of a southern ground hornbill. We have two species. We have the northern and the southern ground hornbills, and they are ground birds. So we have them in Africa, and they are unique to the African continent. So my three study species are the African grey hornbill, the southern yellow-billed hornbill, and the southern red-billed hornbill. And when we look at the distribution maps, we can see that they overlap in most areas of southern Africa. The red star on the maps, that is Mogalakwena River Lodge, and that is my study site. So I'm collecting data. Sorry, I said Mogalakwena River Lodge. I meant Mogalakwena River Reserve. So I'm collecting data.
This is weird.
So my three study species are the African grey hornbill, the southern distribution maps, and they are unique to the African continent.
Sorry, I'm just gonna try something.
And I'm basically studying Zazus. So I'm interested in determining the effect of climate change in particular. I'm currently busy with my MSc thesis, and my project focuses on the effect of climate change on the breeding success of three of savanna and woodlands to the right. This is the study site, so I'm collecting data on Mogalakwena River Reserve, and all three species do occur on the reserve as well. So when we compare the three species, they are very similar. When we compare their weight, the southern yellow-billed hornbill is the largest of the three, whereas the southern red-billed hornbill is the smallest. But their breeding strategy is the same. Their nesting period is very similar. They also have a very similar diet. They are all considered as omnivorous. So they are very, very similar species. So hornbill breeding is quite unique, and they have been studied quite extensively for their breeding. And they breed in natural cavities. My three study species like to breed in natural tree cavities. The photo on the right, this is a great example of how a natural tree cavity looks. And this tree cavity, it's a photo from the reserve, and this tree cavity was actually occupied by a hornbill pair in this current season. They will also breed in nest boxes if nest boxes are available. This is an example of one of our nest boxes on the reserve. So my three study species breed during the wet season, which is our summer season. We receive rain during the summer, and it usually stretches from October to April. And this is then also my data collection period. Rainfall is also considered as quite important for the hornbill breeding, especially for my three study species. And Mogalakwena River Reserve is considered as a semi-arid area. And in semi-arid regions, rainfall is positively linked to food availability. So there's usually an increase of food availability after it has rained, especially after that first summer rains. And we can really see a change in the bush. You can see the change in the color of the plants, and trees start to grow back their leaves. And there's also an increase in invertebrate activity. So hornbills will usually wait until it has rained before they start to breed, simply because rain means food to them. They link rainfall with food, and they also use rainfall as a cue to indicate if there will be enough food for them during the nesting period. The female also needs to obtain a good pre-breeding condition, and she can only do this if there is food available in the bush. So they usually wait until it has rained before they start breeding. My three study species are also considered as each other, and they will for life. And what makes hornbill breeding so interesting and the fact that there's the entrance. So there's a photo at the bottom of a nest box with a sealed entrance. And you can compare that to the nest box on the right, which does not have a sealed entrance. So you can see the difference between the entrances there. So the sealing of the entrance is considered as an anti-predator mechanism. It doesn't keep out all predators. If a predator is able to break the seal, they can obviously still enter the cavity or the nest box. But it does make it a bit more difficult for them, and certain predators will have a difficult time entering the cavity if it is sealed. For example, things like snakes will obviously have a more difficult time entering a sealed cavity than a non-sealed cavity. So for my 3 study species, the female does all the seal work. The male will assist her by bringing sealing material, but he does not seal. She does all the sealing, and she does this voluntarily. It's not something where the male forces her to go into to the nesting cavity. She does this voluntarily. She usually uses her own feces to create the seal. She will also use dry materials like leaves, and then also invertebrates or insects that are sticky. So they like to use millipedes, and I've also seen them use caterpillars to create the seal. So there's a photo of a close-up photo of a seal in the bottom left corner, and you can actually see the layers that the female created as she sealed the entrance. So the female will start sealing the cavity from the outside, and then just before the seal is finished, she will enter the cavity or the nest box, and she will complete the seal from the inside. She leaves a vertical slit, as you can see on the photos, in the entrance, and this is then used by the male to feed her food. So the male's beak fits through that vertical slit, and he uses that to provision to her. And this is what makes the hornbill breeding also very, very unique. The fact that the male is responsible to feed the female and the chicks while they are inside the box. And he's the only one that's feeding the chicks as well for the first part of the breeding season. And while the female and the chicks are inside this box, they are completely dependent on the male for survival. So the male needs to make sure that he brings them enough food so that they survive. They don't leave the nesting cavity or the box to go forage for themselves. They are dependent on the male. So the male has a really big responsibility on his shoulders, or I guess his wings, to make sure that they get enough food. And a fun fact about hornbills is that they don't drink water. So all the water that they need, they must get through the food that they eat. So the male must also make sure that he provisions enough water-rich food to the female and the chicks. So while the female is inside the box, she also undergoes molt, and she loses her flight feathers. So that is her primary flight feathers on her wings, as well as her tail feathers. And she does this all at the same time. So she basically drops all those feathers at the same time. On the photo on the right, this is an example of this is a southern red-billed hornbill female inside a nest box. And you can see that she does not have a tail anymore. So she already molted her tail, and she will then grow the tail feathers. And then you can see there's 2 eggs at the back popping out. So again, the male is not just, responsible for making sure she survives. He must also bring enough food and nutrient-rich food to the female so that she can regrow these feathers. Because molting takes a lot of energy from birds, and it takes a lot of energy for them to regrow the feathers that they molt, and especially in the hornbill's case, because they lose all their flight feathers, their primary flight feathers and their tail feathers at the same time. So the average clutch size for my 3 study species is between 3 and 5 eggs. So they usually lay about 3 to 5 eggs. And the eggs are also not laid at the same time. So the eggs are generally laid about 3 to 4 days apart. And when the chicks hatch, you can see a clear size difference. So the photo here at the bottom is a perfect example of different age chicks. So you can see the 2 big ones, they obviously hatched first. Then we have this middle chick, and then these 2 small chicks were the last to hatch. So for the nesting period, the female stays in the nest box or the nesting cavity for about 2 months. Once she sees that the chicks are big enough to reach food for themselves from the entrance, she will break the seal from the inside and she will depart. She will then help the male provision
food to the chicks. The chicks then need to reseal the seal. And this is quite a vulnerable period for the chicks, because if they don't do this quick enough, it will obviously be it will be easier for predators to enter the cavity. So once the chicks are about 20, 25 days old, they are big enough to reach food for themselves from the entrance, and the female will depart. The chicks stay in the box or the nesting cavity for about 40 to 50 days, and then they start fledging. The oldest chick will fledge first. The chick will, in a similar way as the female, break the seal from the inside, and it will fledge. The remaining chicks will then reseal again. The next chick will fledge. They will reseal again until the last one has left the cavity or the box. So the total nesting period from the first day when the female enters until the last day when the last chick fledges, it's about 3 months. So it's quite an extensive nesting period. And the longer the nesting period, the more vulnerable the nest is, the more vulnerable the chicks and the female is, because the chances of predators finding them are higher, and the chances of being exposed to severe climatic events, like, for example, heat waves, are also higher. So they do have quite an extensive nesting period. So studies on hornbills. Hornbills have been studied quite extensively, especially their breeding, because it's such a unique way to breed. Asian hornbills have received a lot of attention over the years, and that is due to them being endangered or vulnerable. They are mostly endangered or vulnerable because of habitat loss as well as illegal hunting. So the studies on African hornbills are quite limited compared to Asian hornbills. And then also studies on the effects of climatic variables on their breeding is also very limited. There are a few studies available where people have looked, or researchers have looked at the effects of climate change on hornbill breeding, but these studies only include one species. So I will be including 3 species in my study. Then all 3 of my study species are considered as least concerned by the IUCN. But we are seeing a local decline in the southern yellow-billed hornbill population, mostly due to habitat loss, as well as a decrease in rainfall and an increase in drought conditions. So I'm hoping that with this study that I can add to the limited knowledge that we have on African hornbills, and also on the effects of climatic variables on their breeding. So we have 81 nest boxes distributed throughout the Mogalakwena River Reserve, which is my study area. And I will be focusing, or I am focusing, on the occupied nest boxes. So I'm not looking for natural cavities. I'm not including natural cavities or natural nests in my study. I'm only focusing on nest boxes that are occupied by hornbills. So I use a ladder to reach the nest boxes, and all of our nest boxes have a unscrewable lid. So I can open up the nest box from the top, and I can observe and record the contents of the nest box, and then also take out the female and the chicks to take measurements. So this project is also available at Mogalakwena Research Centre to students or researchers. We've had students before that studied the hornbills for their internships. So it is available for anyone that wants to do research on their breeding. So if anyone is interested in joining me in December for data collection and assisting me in the field, you're more than welcome to contact us. And yeah, that would be really great if you could come and speak. Okay, so for my project, I kind of divide my project into 2 very broad or general parts. The first is the effect of temperature on male provisioning rates. This is what I like to call the outside story, because it's outside of the box. And I want to determine how does temperature, affect the male's provisioning rates. Does he provision more or less on hot days? When I'm talking about hot days, or when I am referring to hot days, I am talking about days that are higher than 35 degrees Celsius. So whenever I refer to hot days in the presentation, it's days that are higher than 35 degrees Celsius. So that's the first part, the outside story. The other part of the study is the inside story, and that is the effect of temperature on female and chick body mass. So I'm interested in seeing how does high temperature affect their body mass. Do they lose more weight? Do they even lose weight when it's high, when the temperature is high? Or how does temperature affect their weight? And I have put in temperature loggers inside the nest boxes. So I am recording the nest box temperature as well. Because nest boxes do have, their own microclimate, and it is sometimes different to the temperature and the climate outside. So even though I'm presenting these as two different parts, they are very much linked. For example, even if the female and the chicks inside the box are experiencing perfect temperatures, if the male is not provisioning enough, that will still then affect their body mass. So they are linked. It's not really separate parts. They are very much linked. And then ultimately, I'm going to use this or these two parts to determine if climate change has an effect on the breeding success of the 3 hornbill species. So for the first part of my study, the effect of temperature on male provisioning rate. To understand how temperature will affect male provisioning rate, we need to understand what happens or what do birds do when it gets hot. So birds are endotherms, and they also need to regulate their body temperatures or their body temperature, but they don't have sweat glands like mammals, so they can't cool down through sweating. So they have other mechanisms or behavioral adaptations that they use. One of these is evaporative cooling through panting, and the male hornbill will open up its bill. It will start to breathe a bit more heavily, and as the warm air enters the moist and cool throat area, it will evaporate the moisture and it will cool down the hornbill, or it will regulate its body temperature. This does take a lot of energy, and the hornbill does lose a lot of water through this. And remember, I mentioned that hornbills don't drink water. So to replace this water loss and this energy loss, the hornbill would have to forage and find prey items to eat to replace the energy and water loss. Apart from evaporative cooling, hornbill males will also seek shade, and they will lower their activity. So they will find a cool spot, and they will just rest in that cool spot for a while. So all of these behavioral adaptations or mechanisms to regulate the body temperature takes time. So male hornbills need to spend time on these activities to regulate their body temperature. And what I'm interested in is that trade-off between the male provisioning and him regulating his body temperature. So on hot days, what does the male do? Does he choose to rather spend time on regulating his own body temperature, making sure that he stays cool and spend time on self-maintenance? Or does he choose to, despite the fact that he's really hot, to still continue to forage and find food and provision it to the nest box? So hornbills are considered as long-lived species. They live for about 20 plus years. And because they are long-lived species, they adhere to the life history theory. And this theory basically states that the adults, so in this case, the male hornbill, will choose his own survival over that of his offspring. Because he has many years to live, he knows he has many breeding seasons. So he will, rather save himself this breeding season and then try next season to breed again or to continue breeding, instead of sacrificing himself this season and never have the chance again to breed. So one of my hypotheses for this part of the study is that on high temperature days, there will be a decrease in male provisioning rates, because the males will most likely spend more time on regulating their own body temperature than foraging and provisioning to the nest box. And in regards to climate change, we are seeing a global increase in temperatures. We are also seeing an increase in the frequency of hot days or high temperature days. So we are having more days with high temperatures. And, if the male across or over the nesting period, if he is exposed to more days, more hot days, he will have to spend more time on regulating his own body temperature, which will most likely result in him spending less time on foraging and provisioning to the nest box, which could have negative effects on the condition of the female and the chicks inside the box. So for data collection for this part, I put up trail cameras at the occupied nest boxes. And when I analyze the footage, I record the daily provisioning rate. So basically, how many times does the male bring food to the nest box, and I will then correlate this provisioning rate or this daily provisioning rate to the temperature of that specific day. I'm also recording the type of prey that they are provisioning, and hopefully I'll have enough data for this as well. And I would also like to correlate that with temperature to see if they are bringing different type of prey to the box on hot days. And also to see if the type of prey that they provision to the box changes over or across the nesting period. So I have 3 videos here at the bottom just to show you what my camera trap footage looks like. So the first video I'll show you is of a southern yellow-billed hornbill, and it's a male provisioning a lizard. And you can see that the seal is semi-broken, the oldest chick already fledged, and the young one has not resealed yet. So the next one is the African grey hornbill. It's provisioning a rodent, a small mammal. And then lastly, this is a southern red-billed hornbill male, and it's provisioning a large grasshopper. So as you can see, hornbills are, I mentioned in the beginning that they're omnivorous, but they are very opportunistic. The bulk of their diet does consist out of insects, so they are mostly insectivores, but they are very opportunistic, and they will go for basically anything they can. I've seen them also provision, apart from these videos I've showed you now, I've also seen them provision frogs, scorpions, small snakes. I've also seen them provision big spiders. So they really are opportunistic and will try and catch and provision anything and everything. Let me just get the laser back. There we go. Okay, so the second part of the study is the effect of temperature on female and chick body mass, which I like to call the inside story. And in a similar way as the male, the female and the chicks also need to regulate their body temperatures. They are also endotherms. They also don't have sweat glands. So they also regulate their body temperature through evaporative cooling, through panting, in a similar way as the male. And again, this takes a lot of energy and water loss. And this energy and water loss needs to be replaced. Unlike the male, the female and the chicks can't leave the box to find a cooler spot. So where the male can seek shade and find a cooler area to rest in, the female and the chicks can't do that. They are kind of stuck in the box. So most of their regulation, body regulation, is done through evaporative cooling. And the male, again, is very much responsible for replacing this energy and water loss. Since he's responsible for feeding them, and he has the responsibility to make sure they get enough food, he must make sure that he brings enough nutrient-rich food and also water-rich food to replace this water loss and energy loss of the female and the chicks while they are regulating their body temperatures. So if conditions become really bad or suboptimal inside the nest box, the female does have a few options. The first option is that she can always abandon the nest. So she will break the seal and she will abandon the nest and leave the chicks. This is kind of the worst case scenario, I would say. This is really if conditions become suboptimal, but that is an option for her, because in the same way as the male, she is a long-lived species. So she as well adheres to the life history theory, and she will most likely choose her own survival over that of her offspring, because she knows she can breed the next season. And it's better to save herself to breed again than to sacrifice herself and not be able to breed again. So that's the one option. What they also do is if they realize they are not getting enough food, they need extra nutrients, they will eat one of the eggs. I have on numerous occasions opened up the nest box and one egg is missing, or there's one egg less than there were the previous week. So they do eat sometimes eat the eggs, and then they also do convert to cannibalism. They convert to infanticide cannibalism. So, and this has been recorded in a few different hornbill species. They will actually sacrifice the youngest chick. It's usually the youngest chick, which is also the weakest chick of the clutch. So So they will sacrifice the youngest chick, and the female will either eat it herself or she will provision it to one of the older chicks. And if you think about it, it sounds horrible to do that, but we must also remember that it took a lot of energy for this male and female to start the nest and to lay the eggs and to rear the chicks. So I guess for the hornbills, sacrificing the youngest one to make sure that at least the older ones fledge and survive is not too big of a loss. So then again, in terms of climate change, if we are seeing an increase in global temperature and an increase in the number of high temperature days, the female and the chicks will probably or most likely spend more time regulating their body temperatures, which will most likely mean that they will lose more energy and water through this process. And the male needs to replace all of that. And we must remember that if the chicks and the female is struggling inside the box because it's hot, the male is probably and most likely also struggling outside because it is hot. So for this part of the data collection, I go out in the mornings to the nest box. I take out the chicks and the female, and I take the weight at sunrise. Then I go back in the afternoon, and I take them out again. I weigh them again at sunset. So I basically have a sunset and a sunrise weight. I subtract the two weights from each other. I correct for the time difference, and I can then express it as a percentage. So I can see the percentage of weight gained or lost for that specific day. And I can then correlate it with the temperature for the date, for that day, to see if on hot temperature days, if they are losing more weight or if they are gaining weight. So one of my hypotheses for this part of the study is that on high temperature days, that chicks and females will not gain as much weight as they would on cooler days, most likely because they are spending a lot of energy and water on evaporative cooling, and they are losing a lot of energy and water and mass through this. So I do have the one graph for you, and this is it, the one and only. So it is preliminary results, so all of what we are seeing here can still change. But I'm going to walk you through it. So we have the three species, the African grey hornbill, the southern red-billed hornbill, and the southern yellow-billed hornbill with their colors. On the on the y-axis, I have the chick's diurnal body mass change as a percentage, and that is then expressed as a function of the daily maximum temperature on the x-axis. So when we look at the data, it seems like at the moment, it seems like the southern yellow-billed hornbill and the African grey hornbill chicks are affected by temperature. So on high temperature days, they are not gaining as much weight as on the cooler days. And they are actually losing weight. You can see we're going into the minuses here. They are actually losing weight as well on the hot or the high temperature days. So it seems like temperature is having an effect on their body mass. But we are seeing the opposite for the southern red-billed hornbill. And there's two reasons I can give you for that. First of all, it's because this is preliminary data. This is not even all the data of my first season. I still have to include some data, and of course at the end I will include the second season as well. So it's preliminary, and it can still change. So that's the one reason. But also, if we look at the data and the data I collected on them, if we look at the high temperature days, I didn't really collect a lot of data, on the high temperature days. Most of the data collected stops kind of at 35 degrees Celsius, 36 degrees Celsius days. So I don't really have a lot of hot days, data collected on hot days for the southern red-billed hornbill, and similar for the cooler days. So I don't really have a lot of data on temperatures lower than, I guess, 20, 28, 27 degrees Celsius. So that could be a possible reason why I'm not seeing significant results for the southern red-billed hornbill. But yeah, I think the most important for looking at this graph to remember is that it's preliminary. and then everything can still change. But it is quite interesting to see that I am, getting significant results for 2 of the species already. So I will do the similar. I will do a similar graph for the females to see if the female's body mass and body condition is affected by temperatures. So yes, so just to conclude, I'm busy with my first season of data collection, and then the final thesis will include 2 breeding seasons. And I want to determine the effect of temperature on male provisioning rate, as well as on female and chick diurnal body mass, and then to ultimately to see if temperature does affect their breeding success. Then I did not talk too much about rainfall. I did mention in the beginning, that rainfall is an important part of the hornbill breeding, especially the onset of the breeding. And I am going to include a bit of rainfall in my thesis. And what I'm interested in is, if late rainfall or low rainfall could affect the breeding success. Do they start to breed later the year if we get late rainfall? How does low rainfall affect the starting of the breeding season? And then how does that affect their breeding success? So yeah, and then ultimately to determine the effects of climate change, in particular temperature and rainfall, on the breeding success of the 3 study species. So yes, that is in short my my thesis. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and then learn some cool facts about hornbills, because they are amazing birds. So yeah, I guess we'll go into the question part of it.
Okay. Cool. Thanks. That's a really interesting thesis you are doing, Grietjie. It's really cool.
Thank you. I'm enjoying it so far. So
good to hear. So there are a few questions. Let me see. So Abe is asking, can these questions also have interspecies reproduction, since they are similar in weight, size, diet, breeding period, and nestling methods?
Sorry, Liz, I missed the first part of the question.
Oh,
Will you just repeat this?
Yeah. Can these species also have an interspecies reproduction, since they are similar in weight, size, diet, breeding period, and nestling methods?
Is he asking if they are interbreeding?
Yeah.
No, it has not been recorded with these species. They're completely different species. They're not subspecies or anything like that. They're completely different. But what I have read about is the southern red-billed hornbill. There's a few subspecies of the southern red-billed hornbill, and they apparently do interbreed a bit. There's been cases where they have done DNA tests and they've got them or seen them interbreed. But with these 3 species, it has not been recorded, and I don't think it will happen. They are quite, from the camera trap footage I've seen at the boxes, they are quite competitive, or they are very aggressive towards each other. I've seen other species inspect boxes, and the males will chase away the species inspecting. So I don't think it will happen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I hope that answers your question, Abe. He is also asking, do hornbill couples stay together over multiple breeding periods? That would seem illogical, seeing as the bills are so colorful. If the bills are not used for intersexual competition for reproduction, why are they so colorful?
I think the bills play a much bigger role in the Asian hornbills, because they are much bigger and more colorful. I think in the Asian hornbills it might play a bigger role with sexual selection, or with mating reasons. With my 3 study species, they are monogamous, so they do breed they stick with their partners and they breed with the same partners every season, unless the partner obviously dies, but they do stick together and breed. Like, I don't really know why the bulls are that colorful. I just guess it's part of the evolution of how they have evolved. And I guess it did play some part in sexual or in mating selections in the beginning. Because the males do also have a bit of a bigger and broader bill than the females. But yeah, I don't know if that answers his question.
Okay, thanks. Let us know, Ava, if that answers your question. And I see Jana has raised her hand.
Yes, I did indeed. First of all, thank you so much for your presentation. It was so interesting. It was so good to hear you again. So thank you for that, first of all. And then I do have 3 questions. Like when we talk about sealing the entrance again, are we talking hours or days? Like how long does it take for the chicks or for the female to reseal it?
Hi, Jenna. Hope you're well. So the female is obviously much better in sealing because she's had practice over years, so she can do it within a few hours. But the chicks do take a bit longer. They sometimes take a day or 2, but they tend to do it within a day and within a few hours with the female. They are quite efficient in sealing it.
Okay, cool. But if they, like you said that they hitch, like the eggs hitch at like a day apart or something, like if they need a day to seal it, then why would they seal it in the first place if the next one would break it the next day? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
so
I do understand why they seal it, but why would they seal it in between 2 chicks that would break the seal like one day after another?
So just because the eggs were laid 2 or 3 days apart doesn't necessarily mean that they will fledge 2 or 3 days apart. Sometimes the oldest chick fledge, but the younger chick stays in a bit longer. It depends on that specific chick's body condition and the growth of the feathers if it's ready to fledge. And then even within a day, if they don't seal it or if they take too much time or too long to seal it, they are more vulnerable for predation. So they need to seal it as quick as they can, even if it means breaking it open the next day. Leaving it open for a day means something can come in.
Right, yeah, that is true. I didn't consider that the growth of one chick could be different than the one like the other one. So thank you so much for answering that question. Then I do have a question about your comparison. Like you want to determine breeding success, but what is your comparison? Like you compare those 2 breeding seasons, or what? Like
yes. So I will compare the 2 breeding seasons with each other, but I will also look at it as a whole, and then I will refer to other literature studies and see what other hornbill studies have found. Even if it's not the exact same species, I will compare to that as well, and also just to other cavity breeders as well. There was a previous study done on these specific 3 species in the Kruger National Park, so I have that reference to refer to see if it is similar or different.
Okay, that is really cool, because if you want to like find something out about like their dependence on climate change, then yeah, I was wondering what you would use as a comparison. But if you do have literature for that, then that's perfect for you, I think.
Yeah, so so my manager is the manager of the research center. She did her PhD on the southern yellow-billed hornbill, and she had a similar project. That's actually how she kind of helped me get this idea for my project as well. So I will obviously also use her study as a reference and refer to her study because she worked on the southern yellow-billed hornbill.
Cool. That would be my next question, whether Tanya's work, like Tanya's project, would contribute like directly, not only as a reference to your project.
What do you mean by directly?
Like, could you use some of her data? Like, for like not really a comparison for your breeding success, because well, obviously she did not collect the same data and the same amount of data that you do currently, but maybe you can like use it as a speculation, whatever. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, so I don't really think I'll be using her raw data set. I'm not working through the same university as her.
I see.
But I will definitely use her thesis and the articles that she has published. And obviously in there she published her results, so I will be using that.
Okay, cool. And then I do have a question about the stress of the handling, because as we know, you're interfering with their breeding in a way is a stressor, and stressors can lead to the loss of weight or something like that. Do you consider something like that? Do you discuss something like that in your thesis? And like, can you like, do you see something in their behavior when you get there? Like, do they get habituated to you because they now understand that there is no harm from you?
So I think whenever we are handling animals, we obviously do need to get ethics clearance. So I am getting ethics, or I do have ethics clearance. I'm already collecting data, so I have my clearance. And obviously then you get the training and they go through the whole process with you. But yes, as you mentioned, you're touching animals, and obviously that will cause some sort of stress on the animal. When I'm taking the birds out, I do put them in a cotton bag. I try to, especially the females, the chicks in the beginning of the chicks, they are not really aware of what's going on, and they do not really care. They don't know what the hell you're doing, so they don't really care. With the females are obviously the adult ones, so they know what's going on a bit better. So when I take them out of the box, I put them in a soft cotton bag. And I never show them the light, so I keep it as dark as I can, because obviously the box is dark inside. So I just try and take them out, keep it dark, do the measurement as quick as possible, and put them back. I don't think, because the handling is so quick, like if I just have one bird, it's within 5 minutes that I'm done. Getting up the ladder, opening up, taking out, weighing, putting back, that's 5 minutes and I'm done. Where there's a bit more birds, and obviously it takes a bit more time. So I don't think it will have too much of a big effect. And also I'm only opening the box and taking them out once a week.
I see. I thought you would collect data every day.
Yeah.
So okay, I got that.
Yeah, I wish I could get to the boxes every day, but our boxes are distributed quite far from each other, so it's a bit impossible to get to all of them every day.
That is true.
But yeah, so the handling I don't think will have too much of a big effect really on it. And also, numerous studies before have done it in a similar way, and they have published, and the data has been, or the results have been accepted and stuff. So I think there's a good protocol in place that we are following based on previous studies as well.
Cool. That sounds really, really cool. But you do not take feces and use them for as I did with my water bug poop.
I think that's your speciality.
Yes, it is.
Thanks, Lena.
Oh, sorry. Jana,
So
is it okay if I'm gonna ask a few couple of questions from other people, and maybe
I'm done anyway. I just wanted to thank
sorry.
quickly. So
no, it was really interesting. So Anik is asking, is it possible to see the final results when the research of the 2 seasons has ended?
Yes. Well, I will obviously have a thesis. So if you guys want, you can share your email addresses or whatever with the 20s with Jules or Luce, and I can get it from them, and I can share with whoever's interested. And I would like to publish as well, so I'm going to try and publish at least an article out of my thesis. So hopefully those results will also be available in a journal.
Cool, that would be really cool. Then Ingrid asking, does it negatively influence the behavior of female hornbills when you open the lid of the breeding box to observe or weigh the female and chicks?
So I think it's similar to Jenna's question. we do have, I'm just going to repeat that, like we do have the protocol and the ethics clearance to do this, and then these things, they, you know, we do go through a whole process to get the ethics. When I do open the box, it's not like I just open the lid and look into it. I really do it very carefully to not let in light and not to cause too much disturbance. So when I'm handling the birds and taking them out, I'm doing it as cautiously as I can, and you know, not to be rough and cause unnecessary stress to the birds. But as I mentioned to Jenna as well, numerous studies have used the same methods, and you know, everything worked, and the results were, and the projects were accepted. So I think we are doing okay.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I see Nina has raised her hand. Do you want to ask your question?
Hello? Can you hear
Hi,
me?
Nina. Yes.
Hi, Kiki. I'm just... Okay, I don't know if... Okay, hi. First of all, that was a great presentation. It was really nice to hear all the added information as well. You said earlier on that you are not including natural nests. And my question is, what would you imagine the results to be if you did collect data about natural nests? Like, do you really think that it would influence it very much? If so, in which areas? Or do you have any idea? It's okay if it's...
Yeah, no, I'm thinking. I'm thinking about it. I do think we do have a lot of natural nests on the reserve as well. I've opportunistically found 2 nests in this season, and I didn't really look for them. I just kind of stumbled upon them. So I do think we have a lot of natural nests in the reserve as well. I wish I could include them. It's just a bit too labor extensive for my project.
Yes.
Differences between the two. Generally, from what I've read and what I've heard, the natural cavities do provide a bit better insulation than nest boxes. Usually because the tree stumps are a bit thicker, so the cavities do have a bit of a better insulation. I also personally think that the cavities are better camouflaged than nest boxes when we think about predation. But in regards to, you know, the growth of the birds, I don't think there will be too big of a difference with that, because that depends more on the food availability. So I don't think the cavity or the natural and the nest boxes will have too big of a difference in that. Maybe in terms of the microclimate inside the box, maybe there. But
maybe for the female then? In that case, the female and the chicks?
Yeah, definitely more for the female and the chicks, but I've never, you know, gotten the temperature in natural cavities on the reserve. But I do think they might be a bit cooler than in boxes. So yeah, maybe the natural cavities won't, you know, be cooler, and it might not have such a big effect then on the body mass change of those in hotter boxes.
Because I imagine it would be maybe as a follow-up research interesting to know, in case you would want to know what you could possibly do to help the species when temperatures rise. All right, I have one more question. I don't know if there's enough time.
Yeah, no, of course.
Okay. So the trade-off for the males, you spoke about that in the beginning, the trade-off between the temperature regulation and the providing of food. Do you know if it has been studied in different species? Do you have an approximation of what they do, what you imagine they do? Like, can you make it, like, have expectations?
When they are not provisioning, what they
so in the trade-off, so what do you imagine?
And again, this is what Tanya's, the research manager at Mogalakwena study focused on. She actually did follow the hornbills, the southern yellow-billed hornbills, during the day, and in her study she saw that they were spending more time on thermoregulation than on foraging. So they would prefer to rather sit in the shade and pant or wing drooping to regulate the body temperature, and they would ultimately then spend less time on provisioning and foraging. And the times that they did provision, or sorry, the times that they did forage, they would rather eat the prey themselves to replace their own water loss and nutrient loss, than go to the box and then provision to the chicks and females. So yes, previous studies have looked at it, and not just on hornbills. There's studies that have also looked at pied babblers, and they found similar results, that these birds were also spending more time in the shade, resting, panting, than foraging and provisioning to the nests. So on high temperature days, that is a behavioral adaptation that they are definitely seeing, and it is affecting the body condition of the nests, the individuals in the nests. So,
Right,
yes.
cool. Thank you. That was my question.
Yeah. So I obviously can't include all variables in my study, but I will be referring to these studies that have included the variables that I'm not including.
Yeah, cool. Then another question of 8. He's asking, why is abandoning the nest the worst case scenario instead of eating the eggs or young?
Because then if she abandons the nest, the chicks will most likely all die. When she just eats an egg, there's probably like 2 or 3 eggs left that can still hatch. Or if she just eats the youngest chick, there's probably still 2 or 3 chicks in the box that she can raise. So when she abandons the nest and completely abandons the nest, they will most likely fail. It will most likely be a failed nesting attempt. And if she does this in the early parts of the nesting period, the chicks will be too small and underdeveloped to receive food for themselves from the entrance or to even reseal. So if the chicks are a bit older and they can do that, then there's still a chance for them to survive. But if she does this really early in the breeding or nesting period, then the chicks will most likely not survive.
Yeah. Okay. Then Marit is asking, what is the fledgling survival? How much chicks leave the nest, as you mentioned that the smallest chicks sometimes eaten?
So I haven't really looked at my data to give you a specific number on that, but from the boxes that I can just remember now that have fledged, most of them, they do all fledged. I lose more eggs than I lose chicks, to be honest. It's more often that the female will eat a chick egg in my case than she would eat a younger chick. So I think my hatching rate will probably be a bit lower than my fledging rate. But most of the boxes, at least 2 of the 3 chicks fledge, or at least more than 50%. Most of the time, all the chicks fledged. But here and there, I lose a chick, but I lose more eggs in the boxes.
And is it that they eat more eggs instead of chicks because like the hotter temperatures are in the early beginning of your study?
It could be a possible reason, yeah. So once I have all my data, I'll probably have to link up the temperature and look at the season. And that's also quite interesting with the 3 species, is that they don't all start to breed at the same time. So they wait for the rain, but then usually it's the yellow-billed hornbill and the African grey hornbill that breed first. And then only like a month or so later, the southern red-billed hornbill goes in. So if I'm seeing things like, the southern red-billed hornbill has a better hatching rate and a better fledging rate, it might be because the temperatures are not as hot as in the beginning of the season where the yellow-billed and African greys have already started. So it could be a possible reason, yeah.
Oh, that's really interesting. Yeah. Okay. And then Abe is asking, do the results of the research for these 3 species also give an indication for the other hornbill species in Africa? So if you conclude the high temperature reduces the body mass for these 3 species, can you assume that that also goes for all other hornbill species?
I think we must always be a bit cautious when we do that. But yes, it can be indication of what could happen. But the thing is, it's so area specific. So even if I might see some weight loss in my chicks and females, hornbills in other areas might not have the same environmental pressures they might have more food available. Even if it's hot, there might be more food. So the temperature might not have such a big effect as here, for example, where temperature has a higher effect because they're struggling to provision because there's less food. So I think it could give an indication, but I think we must be careful just to assume that this is the same case for all hornbills, because we must look at the specific area, the study area of where we find the hornbill and the breeding in that specific area, and then obviously also competition between other hornbills. But yeah, it can give an indication.
Okay. Yeah. Then Swan is asking, will the birds eventually migrate to colder areas if it becomes too hot, or is it not possible because of their habitat requirements?
So one of the things we are seeing with climate change in regards to just birds in general is we are seeing a bit of a distribution shift in some species. So some species are moving and they are changing the distribution, and their habitat, is shifting, and they are kind of shifting with their habitat. So I guess it is something that we can see, but I think that that will include a very long study over multiple years to really see if they are shifting. With the hornbills, I think the most important thing is to have trees with cavities, because that is the limiting factor. They can't just breed anywhere in any tree. They need a cavity, and that's also why many species are endangered, especially in Asia, but also some species in West Africa and Central Africa, because of habitat destruction and of deforestation. They are losing their nesting cavities, essentially. So yeah, I guess long term they might shift distribution if the temperatures and the habitat is changing, but as long as there's cavities, I think they would do okay.
Okay, thank you. Then Cas is asking, is it considered to put digital scales inside the nesting boxes so you can measure the birds without taking them out? Maybe the scale can remember all the data so you can look at the data another time.
Yeah. It could be a possibility. I'm not too clued up about the type of digital scales in the world. The only thing I'm thinking is that this box is the cavity is quite crowded. So you have the female and you have your 2, 3, I've had 5 chicks before. So you have the female and the 5 chicks. So they're all kind of sitting and moving around in the box. So I'm not sure, where the scale would be. And also I'm measuring each individual separately. So I'm taking the female out, measuring her chick number 1, chick number 2, chick number 3. So I don't know, maybe there's a scale out there that can pick up the weights of each individual throughout the box. But I think that, I'm not sure if how that would work with a scale that, you need to be able to measure each individual separately.
Yeah.
So if you know about a scale, let me know. It might save me some time as well.
Okay, thank you, Grietjie. Then Louise is asking, is it normal for these kind of birds to live this long? And do they breed every year or less often?
Yeah, so they do mostly live about 20 years plus. Some hornbill species, some of the other species live up to 60 years. The southern ground hornbill has been recorded to live 60, 70 years. So they really can live a few years.
Wow.
Sorry, what was the second part of the question?
Do they breed every year or less often?
So with my pre-study species, they do breed every year, but they are dependent on the rain. So in another study area, they have found that it didn't rain that year and the hornbills didn't breed.
Oh.
So that is also the danger or the effect of climate change. In South Africa, we are expected to see less rainfall and more drought conditions. So if it doesn't rain, the birds will most likely not breed, which will probably show a decrease in the population numbers, and it could lead to localized extinctions. So yeah, they do. If it doesn't rain, they most likely will not start breeding.
Oh, okay. Then Anique has a question. What makes the water intake from food so efficient? For example, compared to toucans that do drink.
So hornbills actually have most birds have all birds have kidneys, but most birds have 2 lobes of kidneys. Apparently the hornbills have 3. So this, I'm not too clued up with the anatomy, but this apparently helps them to absorb more water out of their food. And hornbill feces is also apparently way more drier than other birds' feces, and that's also one of the reasons why it acts as such a good sealant, because it is more sticky and drier, so they can make the seal with their feces. So I think it has probably something to do with the 3-lobed kidney. Yeah.
That's really cool. Wow. Have you ever digested one? Or I mean, like. No, sorry, how do you say?
Dissected.
Yeah,
dissected. No, I haven't found a dead female yet or male to dissect, but it is I guess a possibility if I find one.
That would be cool. Jana has raised her hand.
Yes, it's me again. So I was wondering about that question regarding the scale. Like, I guess it would be much of a trade-off. Like, you could collect data every day, but then you'd have pooled data. Like, you could not say, well, this chick loses weight and this does not. And you could not say, well, the female gains weight, but all the chicks like lose weight. So you would have more data points, but your data would be less reliable in a way.
Yeah, and also the thing is, it's not just the birds inside the box, it's all the nesting material. So how do I differentiate between, the nesting material and the weight of the birds? So yeah, I think that's a bit of a tricky one. I would rather go for the less data but more accurate data than more data but less accurate. In my case, I think that's a better option.
Yes. I just wanted to mention that extra point. Like, I go for the more accurate data as well. So just. Yes, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Anna.
So those are all questions from the chat. Can I answer a question or ask a question, Hedy?
Yeah.
I was wondering, are there any other birds in the reserve that are using the nest boxes in which you might see the same results? Or
yeah, so we do have a few other species that we have seen use the boxes. Woodland kingfishers sometimes breed in them. We've had the green wood hoops, the starlings. So there are a few other birds that breed in it. The hornbills just breed more. So that's why I'm focusing more on the hornbills, because I know my sample size is much bigger compared to the other birds. But it's an interesting point you are making, and it could be something for the future to think of, to include the other birds that are also breeding in the boxes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah. Abe has raised his hand.
Yeah, I had one last question. You weigh all the chicks for their weight. And do you do that like individually? So do you keep track of which chick you weigh when, and do you compare that to earlier observations, or do you just
Yeah. So once the chicks have hatched. In the beginning, when the chicks hatch, you can see the clear size difference, as you guys saw in the photo. But once they start to develop feathers, they kind of all look the same. So what I do is, when they hatch, I paint their toenails with Q-Tex, or their nails. So each bird then, so the one bird will have painted on the left nail, middle nail, and then right nail. So I have a code for each bird. And then I know which individual I'm taking out, and I can keep track of each individual's weight throughout the whole breeding season. So the morning and the afternoon weight, that difference in that weight, I will link or correlate with the temperature for that day. But I'm also going to look at the weight throughout the nesting period to look at their body condition and see, are they doing better this season compared to last season? Is there a difference in the general weight of the bird throughout the nesting period? And usually what we see with the birds as well is, in the beginning, they're gaining weight, they're climbing, and then the growth curve kind of just flattens out when they are older. and just before they fledge, the weight kind of drops, and the parents tend to stop feeding them or tend to feed them less to get them out of the box. So they're kind of forcing him or the chicks to leave and fledge. Otherwise, I mean, if you get food for free, you're going to stay at home. So you also see this growth curve of growing, leveling out, and dropping. So I will also do that with all the weight from the beginning of the nesting period to the end. I'll also create a growth curve as well.
Nice, thank you.
Okay.
Does anyone else has a question? No, I don't think so. Then I think we are gonna end the call. Well, thank you really much, Grietjie. It was so interesting. I really much enjoyed it, and I think the others also. Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me again. It was really fun explaining a bit about my project, and I hope you guys enjoyed it and I guess learned a bit as well.
Yeah, for sure. So let's give an applause to Grietjie. Open up your microphone if you want. And good luck with the further research. And we would like to know what the conclusions and results are.
Yeah, so if you guys follow our Mogalakwena social media pages, I will probably post something in the future as we go. So you can keep updated on that or in that way as well if you want to.
I would love to.
Right.
Thank you everyone for joining, and we hope to see you again at another activity.
All right, thank you.
Bye. Bye.